Attention all personnel. Incoming podcast. This is MASH Matters.
Welcome to MASH Matters, the podcast celebrating the greatest television series of all time, brought to you by two guys who love the show for slightly different reasons. I'm Ryan Patrick. I was a fan of the show, and he is Jeff Maxwell, who was on the show. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, Ryan Patrick. I was on the show, and boy, that was a lot of fun for umpteen years, playing with all those people that were on MASH. Oh, boy, oh, boy.
You know what we should do? We should do a podcast talking about that.
I don't think anybody will show up for it. I don't know.
No, you're right. You're right. It was a terrible idea. Just forget I said anything.
We could do a podcast about polar bears or something. I think probably people show up for that.
I mean, I don't know a thing about polar bears, so I really wouldn't be able to answer anybody's questions about polar bears. But then again, I don't have a lot of answers to people's questions on this podcast either. So,
well, I know that they're big and they're white and they eat seals. That's all I know.
And thus concludes the Polar Bear Podcast. This podcast, however, is celebrating its 99th episode with this episode right here. How about that, huh?
Yowie.
We're about to hit triple digits.
Ooh. Ding, 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 ding. 99 is pretty good. I'm happy with 99.
You just want to stop here?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that's it. We're done.
That's it. Abyssinia MASH Matters.
No. In fact, we're going to move on here, and we have a very special guest with us on this episode.
Yeah.
Our guest today knows his way around the entertainment industry, knows what it's like to be on a beloved hit television series. Why is he on MASH Matters? Well, we're going to tell you all about that right now. Here is our interview with Will Friedle. So, MASH goes off the air in 1983.
It's off the air?
What? It is. I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry to break the news
to you.
So, MASH goes off the air in 1983. 10 years later, in 1993, a show premieres on ABC that goes to run 7 seasons, Boy Meets World. Now, what on earth does Boy Meets World have to do with MASH? Well, Will Friedle. Hello, Will.
Hi, how are you?
We get a lot of listener emails, but rarely do we get listener emails saying how much they love MASH from somebody who was also on a successful television series. So that was a very pleasant surprise to see your name pop up in our inbox. So thank you for reaching out.
Are you kidding? I am a MASH fanatic, MASHaholic, whatever you'd like to call it. I know back at the beginning of the podcast, people were deciding what to call themselves. I just refer to myself as an orderly. And so I have loved everything about it. I would not be an actor were it not for MASH. And every morning when I walk my dog in the neighborhood, I put on MASH Well, when I can, I put on MASH Matters, and I just started binging the podcast. And I said, I'm going to write them and absolutely invite myself on this podcast, which is what I did. And now here I am. You can manifest it.
Absolutely. You did such a good job with that invitation. I mean, how could we turn that down?
Exactly.
Wonderfully done.
Exactly. Jeff, it's so wonderful to speak with you and hear your voice in my head for real and be having a conversation. My brothers and I speak in quotes. We have since we were kids. It's just an absolute language that we are fluent in. And whenever we get to a new place, one of us invariably, just out of the dead silence, will say, I thought there were going to be refreshments here. And so it is absolutely, it's something we have said for in my entire life, literally my whole life. So this is what when I called my brothers, I was like, I'm going on MASH Matters. Ryan and Jeff, they're like, you've got to be kidding me. And then of course the conversation was an hour long of just MASH quotes, which is what we tend to do. So that is, one of us will say that at an inopportune time. Yeah, it's great.
A perfect time to do that. Any inopportune time to say that is.
Yep, exactly.
That's very nice. Thank you. I'm glad that's working out for you.
It is. It's been great.
Yes.
Has MASH been a part of your life?
My whole life.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely my whole life. So I was born in 76. So I found MASH a little bit later in that I was able to recognize I was watching MASH a little bit later, but I was watching MASH my whole life because my parents watched it and my brothers watched it. And when you're the youngest of three boys, you're allowed to watch what your brothers decide that you're allowed to watch or listen to whatever music they want you to listen to. And MASH was one that everybody in the family loved for obvious reasons. And between MASH, which was far and away number one for me, and Michael J. Fox on Family Ties and Different Strokes, I knew by the time I was about 3 that I had to be on television. It's just all I ever wanted. And watching Alan Alda, especially, who was just had that amazing, almost British dry wit. It was an acting school every week. It was great.
In the email that you sent us, you specifically said that Alan Alda made you want to be an actor. You're 3 years old and you're watching this guy on TV. I mean, what is it that makes you just say, this is the life for me?
I don't know. As my parents, so no one in my family was part of the industry. I am from a small town in Connecticut. Both my parents are lawyers. My father's also a retired captain of the Navy. We had nothing to do with the industry at all, but I was named after a television character. So I was William after my grandfather, but was supposed to be Billy. But my oldest brother's favorite show was Lost in Space. So I was named after Will Robinson from Lost in Space. And my first ever full sentence was talking about the Cylon Raiders from Battlestar Galactica. So I was just absolutely born to do this. And by the time I was 3 or 4, I was, I think it all starts, and I think Jeff can understand this as well. And you, Ryan, as well, because I know you're an actor too. It starts with, especially at a young age, the need to be the center of attention. And you learn very young that there are positive ways to be the center of attention and negative ways to be the center of attention. I found comedy very early, and I loved making people laugh and standing in front of whatever crowd was around me and making them laugh. But watching the masters do it, and Alan Alda is certainly that, you realize it wasn't just running in and falling down. It was the slight raise of an eyebrow or, a look could send people to the floor. And Alan Alda is the king of that. So there was just something about watching the progression of the character and watching how he tackled it that made me realize that this is just what I had to do. So I worked and worked and worked.
You said that as a kid, you knew you wanted to do this and you liked being the center of attention. When did that first happen? When did you say, hey, I really like being the center of attention?
I always liked to make people laugh when I was very, very young. But when I really found it, I think, so in 2nd grade in Newington, Connecticut, every Friday we had free day and we were allowed to do whatever we want. And every single Friday I put on a play. It was always exactly the same play because it was the only one I knew. I'm sure my class loved watching just one episode over and over and over again. But I put on Stone Soup, which was a phenomenal play that was easy to do. And that was the following year, we moved from Newington, Connecticut to Avon, Connecticut, which actually had a drama department. And the teacher there, when I was in 3rd grade, said, I think you've got something here. And there's an audition at the Hartford Stage, which is a great local stage, for A Doll's House. And I went and I I got the smallest part in the play. It was 1 line. And then a week before the play debuted, they switched me with the lead kid. And I ended up having 2 or 3 scenes. And of course, being 9 or 10 at the time, I had no idea who I was working with. But looking back now, the play was with Mary McDonnell, David Strathairn, Mark Lamos. It was like some of the most Jerry Bannon, some of the most incredible actors ever.
Yeah.
And of course, at 9, I'm making $70 a week. I'm getting paid to do this. This is the coolest thing in the world. Wow. And I just fell in love with it. And then I begged my parents to let me get a manager and try it in New York. We were about 2.5 hours away from New York City. My father came home one day with 20 yellow pages, which was the Google of the day. Mm-hmm. And we went through and took really bad headshots in the back of his office with a friend of his who took like local pictures at a mall kind of thing. And 6 months later, I was on my first series on Nickelodeon. And I've been doing it 35 years now.
Wow.
So yeah, just been very lucky, but it's all MASH for me all the time when I look back at my life and what brought me here and what the pinnacle is. And I still think it's it's funny because I do a podcast, shameless plug, called Pod Meets World. Mm-hmm. And we talk about what got us into the industry all the time. And one of the on-running jokes is I will fit MASH in wherever I can into the conversation. And it's just, to me, there's certain seasons that are perfect television, absolutely perfect television.
Which seasons do you consider to be perfect?
I think season 3 of MASH is about as good as you can get. Again, there's different reasons to like different seasons of MASH. David Ogden Stiers comes in, and first of all, anybody who loves television or has been on TV will tell you, changing characters midstream is the most difficult thing to do in the business. You can't just swap out one character for another. That's not supposed to work. And MASH was able to do it twice. It makes no sense other than Cheers with a couple characters. That just really hasn't been done that successfully in television history.
MASH actually did it 3 times. You had Trapper and BJ, and
and I guess if you talk about exactly, Potter and Blake. So you're right, 3 times. It should not work, and it does every time. It adds a whole new. The show changes, but it still adds an entirely new dynamic to the show. It brings in a whole another level of comedy or of drama or of both. It's so amazing how it works that way. And so I'll watch season, say, 2 or 3 and get one thing out of MASH. And then I'll watch season 6 or 7 and really concentrate on David Ogden Stiers' performance, which is gorgeous. His performance as Winchester, some of the subtle beats he takes are unbelievable. And the thing that amazed me is I was listening to, it was not too long ago, re-listening to the table read that you guys put up. And all the beats were there during the table read. Some actors find those when they're on their feet. And he did. Certainly, there were certainly different moments when the show actually aired, when Bottle Fatigue came out. But a lot of those brilliant moments he already had at the table. That's insane for an actor to already have those tiny, subtle moments at the table read. Just nuts. So I that's one of the reasons I love watching MASH, is because every season you're picking up something different. So it's, I watch it every day. So
what does your wife think about that?
My wife was always a MASH fan. And now, so television to us is our white noise at night. And so we fall asleep every night to MASH. And so I'll come in, and now it's just her. I'll hear her laughing in the other room, and I'll know it's like, yeah, she's got MASH up. So we love everything about it. And again, just being I was very blessed in the family that I was born into. We're a very close family, but television was my best friend. So MASH was just so important to me, but I love it. And the one question that nobody's asked so far on the podcast, which I'm amazed about, is, did he really shoot the bugle out of Gary Berghoff's hand? I'm kidding. I've heard that question now so many times. That also, by the way, I don't wait for questions. I just keep talking. It's because I podcast for a living.
Well, it gives us a chance to relax. I mean,
good.
That's perfect. Sit here going, is he still talking, Ryan? Good. Okay.
I love it. Just pass out. I'm good. I don't. Folks, it's just us now. Ryan and Jeff are asleep. Okay. So I was talking about Connecticut. One of my brother's closest friends growing up was a guy named Dougie Berghoff, who was Gary Berghoff's cousin. So I grew up in the town right next to Gary Berghoff. So that was the connection too of, wow, somebody from right around here could actually go to Hollywood and make it. And it was Gary Berghoff. So we knew the Berghoffs. And while I'd never met Gary, Dougie was over all the time. So it was just, we had that connection as well. It was really cool.
Interesting. Did you know Gary's parents?
I did not. I think my parents did, though. I believe because there was part of the Berghoff clan in Bristol, which is where Gary Berghoff is from. And then there's part of the Berghoff clan in Newington, which is where we were from, which sounds like too very far, but it's like 15 minutes away. But that the whole clan was kind of around there. And there was always, you'd always drive by and there would be billboards of Gary Berghoff, like for a local car dealer or something. He would always lend his image to something in town. So you're always driving by and there's Radar right up on the screen. And it's kind of like, man, he grew up around here. I bet you I could do it too. So it was cool. Inspiring. Yeah, it was very inspiring. Cool.
Now, in your career in entertainment, have you ever had the opportunity to meet or work with anybody from MASH?
I have. I've been very, very lucky. So Boy Meets World, as you said, ran for 7 seasons. Jeff, I don't have to tell you that. I know you're a huge fan.
Absolutely. I know. I have it on now. You can't turn the volume down, but I have it on now.
he goes to sleep listening to it.
Listening to
Absolutely.
yes, I could tell you're
when
a
I
big
can't go
TGIF
to
fan.
sleep, I turn it on and
and you're out. which is
right
great.
out.
No, so first of all, I'll get into that story later, which nobody knows, but there's a number of characters on Boy Meets World, guest stars as well, that were reoccurring on MASH. Earl Bowen, for instance, did a guest star on MASH, did a guest star, he just passed last year. Blake Clark, who was very much reoccurring and part of our cast on Boy Meets World, did a number of episodes of MASH. So I got a chance to meet and talk with some people that were actually on the set. But the story that nobody knows, they know part of the story because William Daniels, who played Mr. Feeney and was on St. Elsewhere and, is a remarkable actor. He, after the pilot of Boy Meets World, which I was not on, a number of characters from Boy Meets World were recast after the pilot. But after the pilot, Bill said he was going to quit. He said, this is not for me. This is it's a 4-camera show. There's an audience. It's not something that I'm used to. I'd like to move on, please. And of course, our executive producer, Michael Jacobs, did everything he could to keep him, but had to have a backup plan. And apparently his backup plan, which was agreed to, was David Ogden Stiers. So there was a chance, and nobody knew this, but there was a chance that David Ogden Stiers was going to be the legendary Mr. Feeney.
Wow.
So that is the rumor that we have heard, which, if talk about remarkable casting would be amazing. Bill, of course, came in and made Mr. Feeney, but it's always interesting to think about the road not taken.
Well, it's very interesting, too, because I was thinking as I was on my walk this morning, I was thinking about our conversation today, and I started thinking about the parallels between Boy Meets World and MASH. You and I are about the same age. Well, I was born in 75. So growing up, TV was also my best friend. And I grew up watching these people, and I grew up watching St. Elsewhere. And you have Bill Daniels on St. Elsewhere. You think Dr. Mark Craig and Dr. Charles Emerson Winchester at some point cross paths.
Yeah.
In some fictional world, you have to think that they did cross paths with each other.
Yeah.
And they probably hated each other, but they no doubt crossed paths because they were both in Boston. But that made me start thinking about Bill Daniels was your show's David Ogden Stiers.
Yeah.
So the fact that David Ogden Stiers almost played that role,
it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It is very, again, just sitting there and working with Bill every day, you got a taste of that kind of old school, legendary Hollywood feel. Mm-hmm. And I always say that, my father taught me how to be a man, but Bill Daniels taught me how to be a professional. He was never late. He never missed a line. If his call time was 8:30, he was there at 7:30. It's just, that's the way he was. So he instilled that in all of us. It didn't matter that you were 11 or 12 years old. You're an actor. You're part of the cast. I'm going to treat you exactly the way that I would treat anybody else. And I imagine that somebody like David Ogden Stiers would probably be very similar to that in that respect. There are certain things that I look at how we grew up as actors and the stories that you all tell. Like, Jeff, when you were talking about how you would do the table read and then the producers and writers would open up the floor to the actors for the actors to give them notes. As an actor, I told that story on Pod Meets World, and my fellow actors were like, "Oh, I couldn't even imagine that give and take." Because as kids, it was more like, "Here's your lines. Now go do your lines." Mm-hmm. So the idea of sitting there as an actor and being able to say, here's really what and again, I don't want to give the impression that we didn't have a creative set, because we did. And especially as we got older, we were certainly allowed to input what we wanted and ad lib here or there and have a little bit of fun when the audience was there. But that kind of give and take with those adult actors shows in the performances, and it shows in the product that you get at the end of these amazing writers and producers working with this amazing cast. And there's such a synergy that at the end of the day, you get MASH, and it's just perfect.
Well, I think it was, it really is as a result of Gene Reynolds and Larry Gelbart. Gene Reynolds was a genius at doing what he did and was able to cast the show and run a show with some pretty high-powered people and allow them to be who they were and welcome them to be who they were. And so that kind of mindset, is kind of rare and isn't always done with as much elegance as he did it. So he had the dignity and the class and the ability to allow people to be who they were and to hear what they had to say and to be creative enough and know that he had to be creative enough to have that work for the show, because that moment, allowing people to be who they were, really helped make the show better. Yeah, it was a lucky thing. I mean, for a group of actors to be able to have the producers allow them to speak out and say, no, well, let's talk about this, is pretty remarkable. So
incredible.
Pretty cool.
And just,
yeah.
It's a rarity too, to get, I mean, just occasionally, you catch lightning in a bottle when you get the right producers with the right directors, with the right actors, and you make something that lasts forever. I mean, there's a reason why I go to these conventions and I sit in the room, in the green rooms with the biggest Marvel actors in the world. I mean, literally the biggest movie stars in the world. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then Jamie Farr and Loretta Swit walk in and I can't speak. It's because it's perfection, and it meant so much to me growing up. And it's funny because Pod Meets World essentially started because Ryder Strong, who's one of my best friends in the world, and Danielle Fishel, one of my other best friends in the world, Danielle and I had not seen Boy Meets World in 30 years, and Ryder Strong had never seen it. He's the Jeff of our show. And so that's what it is. We're now 30. It's our 30th anniversary. And so he's watching it for the first time ever. And we have fans that are me to MASH, if that makes sense, where they're kind of coming in and saying, I watch it all the time. It meant so much to me. And Ryder and Danielle are starting to understand that. But because they didn't have a MASH growing up, they didn't have a show that meant so much to them, they don't fully understand it the way that I do, because I know how much MASH means to me and what it meant to me in my life and my career. So I can understand how Boy Meets World might mean that for someone else. But it is, I get Jamie Renner, all these great, incredible actors walking by me. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Loretta Swit walked by and I was like, oh my God, it's all that. I mean, so I collect the original MASH toys from the 70s. Some people don't even know that they exist, but I have a ton of them. All original boxes. I'm a big nerd. Don't get me started. I have the action figures, all in the original packages, including the elusive Klinger in dress. So I am going, I think it's to Salt Lake City, something like that. I think you were actually supposed to be there, Jeff, at one of these, and then you had to cancel. But Loretta Swit and Jamie Farr came, and I packed up my 2 action figures in bubble wrap, and I packed them in my suitcase, and I brought them with me like a fan and I walked up to them in the green room with my little Sharpie, and I said, excuse me, Mr. Farr, Miss Swit, would you sign it? They both of them couldn't have been nicer. I said to Jamie Farr, I said, your show made me want to be an actor. And he started laughing. He said, I have heard our show made me want to be a doctor. I have heard our show made me want to be in the army. He said, I have never heard our show made me want to be an actor. And I said, well, thank you very much. He signed my action figure, which he also did not even knew existed. He said, I didn't even know this was a thing. And she signed it as well. And I was the happiest kid in the world. It was amazing.
So I know it's impossible to narrow it down, so I'm not going to ask you what's your favorite episode, but do you have favorite episodes?
I do. So my brothers and I, so when I told them, of course, that I was coming on the show, again, I played at one time for Kim Possible back in 2002. I got to do a live show at the Royal Albert Hall in London. I did not tell anyone in my family. I didn't care. When I was coming on MASH Matters, I called both my brothers immediately. And I was like, guys, I get to talk about MASH with Jeff Maxwell. Ryan's this other great guy. He's hosts the thing. He's a super fan like us. They were like, oh my God, you're kidding. Which then led off to, okay, what are our favorite episodes? The first ones I mentioned, they're like, you can't, come on, that can't be it. And we got into a discussion that lasted like 2 hours.
Debate.
So I have a number of them for a number of different reasons, which is what you have to say.
Yeah.
Harry Morgan's performance in The General Flipped at Dawn is absolutely ridiculously genius. It's so good and so out there. And the kind of meta world where you get to see Henry Blake and I'll say Harry Morgan because it's not Potter on screen together is pretty great.
Yeah.
So I am a huge fan of The General Flipped at Dawn. Tuttle. Everyone always mentions Tuttle, which is another really good episode. 5 O'Clock Charlie. I know it's very almost cliche to say it's one of the best episodes, but it's one of the best episodes for a reason. So I tend towards the earlier episodes for the comedy, but some of the later episodes, Major Ego was a great episode. I mean, there's kind of one after another that I love for different reasons. I could find the virtue in almost any episode of MASH. Yeah. Again, being an actor and insecure in my own self, what actors love to do is critique other actors and other shows. So I could also find flaws in everything else, like every other actor. but the good so outweighs the bad. And so you know, it was another great episode, which again, I just quoted to you, Jeff, Soldier of the Month. Absolutely phenomenal episode. Bombed. Another great episode. I mean, there's just kind of one after another. And they did a run of several seasons in a row that were just seamless. I mean, when you can go right from Trapper to BJ, Welcome to Korea, parts 1 and 2, though I prefer to watch it as one. Hulu, now that they're on, they're cutting stuff out when they're trying to do these long episodes, which I'm not a fan of. So going back to the DVDs and watching it as one, that is basically a mini movie introducing a new character in such a fun way that then by his first real episode, which is Change of Command, I think, which is Potter coming in, BJ's now already established.
Yeah.
He's already part of the show. You don't even have to worry about him anymore. They did it so well and so fast that now we're getting into introducing another character. The insanity of being able to do that successfully is nuts.
Yeah.
Nuts.
You're right.
Well, I don't want to take all the credit for it, but I am pretty responsible for a lot of that. So
I noticed.
This is a scoop you're hearing today on MASH Matters. Hey, by the way, what are your brothers' names? We want to say hi to your brothers.
My oldest brother's name is Gary, and my middle brother's name is Greg. Yes, it's Gary, Greg, and Will.
Gary and Greg, how are you? Great to hear that you're fans of MASH. Keep watching because we all love the residuals. So please keep watching. How nice of you guys to listen. No, thank you very much. That's very kind.
They're going to love that.
I hope so.
This is another story I wanted to tell you. When I was younger, I missed my SATs to watch MASH, and it cost me $10,000.
Wait, what?
Well, I know you guys like to pay people back for the stuff that, you very nicely gave the gift card. I am 10 grand in the hole, so I can do a cashier's check. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. We can figure it out.
I did let you know it was $20,000 to appear on our podcast.
Exactly. You did.
So we'll be happy to.
Yeah,
okay,
the difference.
We're even though, aren't we? Something like that. I can't have her.
Okay, wait, Jeff, I have a question. So now I have to fan out a little bit. Okay. So I have some fan questions here.
All right.
I have had to jump around on the podcast, so I apologize if you have answered this question already and I just haven't gotten there yet or haven't heard it yet. How often did the actual actors get to ride in the helicopters?
That's a good question.
That's a great question. Let me think. How often did the actual actors get to ride in the helicopters? Very rarely. I couldn't tell you the number, but it was a very low number
but occasionally though, right?
Occasionally it would take off and it would go around and come back. Most of the time they would just, it was TV. So they'd start the props and it'd go, and then the camera would go like that. And that would be it. Every once in a while, but they didn't let those guys go up in that helicopter too often because you never knew.
That's what I figured. I wanted to know that. Okay, that's it. My other question is, so one of the stories that I think, who told it? I can't remember who told the story. Well, I think it was Mike Farrell told the story when he came on your podcast that David Ogden Stiers sent a cake or something in the mess hall of the where Paramount Studios, where the studios we were shooting at, to Harry Morgan and some other people and said it was from some big actor or director as a practical joke and got a big laugh. And that started kind of a prank war. And they used that in an episode of MASH where it's David Ogden Stiers who ends up sending the cake over to the chopper pilot. Yeah. And it gets Loretta Swit in trouble and blah, blah, blah. So my other question is, how often did they take from life of things that happened on the set or behind the scenes and write that into the show?
4 times.
So specific.
Next question.
Okay.
Okay.
If a train leaves New York.
So, okay. No, I don't know. What I do know is that it happened, as often as it could. So if somebody said something, the writer said, "Oh, what?" And it felt right and it resonated with a theme or with a story, or they'd steal it. I mean, they'd use it definitely. They used my name twice. My last name they used Maxwell, and then later when I became Igor, that was used because they were calling me Igor on the set because I used to roam around and do crazy, funny things, and I was the goofball. You understand, I was the wacky kid in class who couldn't stop being wacky. So I would, wander around like Igor from Frankenstein, and that name stuck. And then they wrote it into the show. So, that was just a very small window of what happened. But yeah, they'd use a lot of stuff. Did they do it on your show?
With small things, little things, if one of us liked a certain rock group at the time, they'd write in that we liked a certain rock group at the time, something like that, because they knew it was topical and it was of the moment. But I don't know if any real storylines kind of came from our life. I mean, again, it was adults writing for kids, essentially. So they might have done it for some more of the adult characters than they did for the child characters, but not that we saw a whole lot. Oh, by the way, that's totally you in the foxhole during Welcome to Korea, where they call you by a different last name.
Is it? I don't remember.
100%. No, it's 100%.
Me?
Yes.
100%. You were Salkowitz, which again, as Salkowitz at one point is the acting camp librarian. So again, Ryan, I'll go nerd for you all day long with MASH, my friend.
Bring it.
Jeez.
So yeah, no, it's completely you.
I'm a little nervous between two nerds. I don't know what that means. I'm a little uncomfortable.
Don't you understand? Nerds, we own the world now, Jeff. We own the world. Okay. It's amazing. Yeah, no, because you then have lines later in that episode. This is the whole Frank Burns comes over and Larry Linville comes over and says, dig deeper here. And you say, your end, sir. And he's never mind my end. So yeah, you do all that stuff. Again, this is my life.
I love it.
I will do this all day long.
That MASH sounds like a cute little show.
God. Can I tell you the other thing? This is not to get ridiculous or emotional, but one of the other reasons I love television is because it defies death. Wayne Rogers is no more alive to me or dead to me now than he will ever be. I will always know Wayne Rogers. I will always know the characters that are there. Now, did I know the people? No, of course I didn't, nor would I ever claim to. But I know that slice of their life, and that it's eternal. It will never, ever change. Phil Hartman is one of my favorite of all time. I can always turn on something with Phil Hartman and he will forever be alive to me. So that's one of the things that I love about television. And that's one of the things where Wayne Rogers is always there. William Christopher, always there. Harry Morgan, always there. And they're always there every time I want them to be. And so there's something so wonderful about that. And that's something that television does. So yeah, and when you get something like a MASH, there's a beauty to the idea that the time capsule episode was the second to last, because all of MASH is a time capsule to me. And I can relate certain episodes to certain things that were happening in my life, like people can do with music. Oh, I hear this song. That was when I was 18 and I blah, 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 blah. I can do that with certain episodes of MASH. Oh, I remember when I showed this too, or I remember this was happening when. And that's what great television can do.
I'm not going to say that I'm the only one, but I have to be in the minority of 48-year-old men who just in the last month started watching Boy Meets World for the first time. So I started watching it and I started listening to your podcast, and I'm enjoying both. I'm enjoying watching it. I didn't know what to expect because, we're about the same age. So in 1993, when you guys started is when I graduated high school. So I was just aging out of the TGIF.
Me too.
Yeah. And so I never really watched it when it was on originally. And so when I started watching it, I think I thought it was going to be a little more hokier than it was. And I'm only about 4 or 5 episodes in right now. I just started. But I found that it's very smartly written. There have been several times so far where I thought I knew where the joke was going, and it zagged and it went a completely different way, and it caught me by surprise. And it was such a pleasant surprise. So I'm really digging it. And I love Pod Meets World, and I love the dynamic because the three of you can tell how much you are fond of each other and the fondness you have for the show. And the fact that you're still not afraid to talk about the things on the show that maybe weren't always great. I mean, it's not all sunshine and roses and unicorns. It was a job, just like Jeff talks about on this podcast. And I love that you guys are so open to talking about that. So,
well, thank you. It's sometimes it was not always conducive to an atmosphere that was amazing for children. That does not necessarily mean anybody was evil or any of that stuff, but it's just, it's the way it happened. And, Ryder and Danielle have been two of my best friends since we were, 14. So growing up together, we all had that kind of same experience. I mean, Jeff, when you're with the cast, you have a group of people you can talk to that experience the same things you did. And you're together in this shared memory. And while your memories may differ and while your experiences may differ, you have a base of history where you have that shared common knowledge. So yeah, Ryder and Danielle and I have a wonderful time doing that. But talking about what you talked about, Jeff, again, first of all, getting that it was just a job, I totally understand that. I also get that you're coming from a career in stand-up, which is not only such a different version of entertainment, but with a whole different lifestyle. I mean, going from playing the clubs at night to, hey, I've got to be on the set at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was laughing. I'm sorry. I know there's not a lot of swearing on this podcast, but I was laughing my ass off the first time when you were talking about spraying for the bees and how much you hated it. And it's like, I'm a nightclub performer. It's 6 o'clock in the morning and I'm freezing. What am I doing here?
I was just about, during the nightclub era that I was in, I was about to go to bed at 6 o'clock in the morning. So getting out there with guys spraying stuff on bees. What are you doing? I'm sleepy. It was a very big, bad transition. Really tough one.
I love that
night. Yeah, that nightclub business was, well, you've done that, haven't you? Have you done stand-up?
Stand-up is not, it's such a different beast. And it's one that I like to consider myself pretty funny and pretty witty, but I don't have the fortitude to get up there and do that.
I was lucky. I was a part of a comedy team. So we were together. We had each other to bounce off of. So that was a good thing. When we sort of split up, I tried to do it myself and I could do it, but I didn't like it. I liked being with him and I like to have that, back and forth kind of conversation. I didn't like standing there. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, what about those shoes? Come on, let's talk about those. I just didn't like it.
Is there any way to see any of the stuff you did as a comedy team? Can you see it on YouTube or any kind of places to find it? 'Cause I'd love to see it.
$30,000. I will send you a video tape.
I hope somebody is keeping track.
I was just about to say,
there's a lot of money going on here.
I owed you 20 to come on, then you owed me 10 back.
10,
so.
And now there's 20.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out later.
Honestly, I don't know. I've sort of searched for us. We weren't, when we were doing it, there was not a lot of video going on.
Yeah.
So not really. The only video that happened was when we went on the USO tour and we were in Korea. And those guys were sort of videotaping some stuff, but I don't have it. And I don't think they were, hey, we got to get up on YouTube because there was no YouTube.
Yeah, exactly.
We were doing it. So,
or audio. Maybe somebody recorded one of your shows because I would definitely love to hear that.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it myself. I mean, I know we were pretty funny, but I'd still love to hear us be funny. I don't remember a lot of it.
And he was during the episode where Hawkeye is taking the picture of everybody. I think it was Big Mac.
Yep.
He's standing to the left of you in the hat, correct? Your partner?
I think he's to the right of me.
To the right. Okay.
He's to the right of me.
Yes. Okay. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I went back after I heard that. I went back and that's what I love about this podcast is I'll hear something and I'll be like, well, got to go back and check that out.
Yeah. And he's a great guy. He's a terrific guy. We were called Garrett and Maxwell, and he was Bill Garrett and I was Jeff Maxwell. And we were together for 7 years, and we traveled around the United States and ended up traveling around the world and had a ball. It was a wonderful experience, which I would not give up for the world.
Well, I was just going to pitch you an idea. So I'm a writer as well. I hate to say that, but it's true. I write for a lot of the animated series that I do. So the idea just came to me as you were saying it. It's a comedy team that was together a long time ago on the USO that broke up, that now is going to get back together modern day to go on the USO tour again in a new war, and they get trapped behind enemy lines.
Oh, I kind of like that. Oh, I like that.
Right.
I think it'd be fun. And as they're behind enemy lines, they're like, one of the scenes is they're trying to be quiet because the enemy's right there. And that's, of course, the time when Why They Break Up came up, and they're starting to argue as quietly as they can as the snipers are coming into the room.
Okay. I like it.
Has to be done. One very bizarre question.
Now, just to clarify, it's going to be a minimum price on that. Okay, so don't get excited.
Well, we'll get.
No.
I'm just
Writer's
trying to pitch
minimum.
enough stuff. Yes, we're by the end we're even. That's all I care about. That's all I care about.
Yeah.
I have another question. What is the fascination with the name Mildred on MASH? Because it was Mildred Blake at first, and then it became Mildred Potter. So I'm curious why it went from Mildred to Lorraine, and why then they kept the name.
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know that Harry and Frida were the names of
The Tuttles.
and that was Mr. and Mrs. Gelbart. That was
Yes.
Harry Gelbart's parents' names. So it's not that. Somebody had to have been named Mildred. And
Right.
I don't know who came up with Mildred and why. I mean, there's, Potter was supposed to be from Hannibal, Missouri, but he's talking about
Yep.
Nebraska. And
Nebraska and yeah.
Hawkeye
Oh, I love
has
the
a
continuity
sister,
stuff.
And I mean,
I love it. That's all TV. Boy Meets World is famous for just some of the worst continuity ever. Just ever. Sisters that disappeared. And we always just call it Chucky Cunningham, somebody where,
Yes.
from Happy
Yes,
Days.
from Happy Days.
Ron Howard had a brother who went upstairs holding his basketball and you never saw him again. So that's happens in TV all the time is the
That's
answer to
funny.
that, I guess. Yeah.
Hey, have you been out to the MASH site out at Malibu Creek State Park? Have you ever visited that?
No. Can you
Really?
believe that? I live
can't believe
maybe
that.
20 minutes from there. Maybe
Holy cow,
20 minutes
you've
from there.
never
And I
been
love
there.
hiking. And I've
Oh.
never been.
Wow.
Yep, I know. My wife
Good
and I talk
grief.
about it all the
Holy
time. And I've
moly.
never been. I know. It's awful. It's awful.
Of all the people, you would really enjoy it. You really should go out there. Let me know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go with you.
All
We'll
right,
get
cool.
Ryan out here. Ryan, we'll all
Yes.
three go out there.
Have
bring
you
your
not
wife.
been out here yet, Ryan?
Yeah, I was out there last year on the 50th anniversary. We were at the
Yeah, you did a
at
live.
the-
I haven't listened to
Yeah.
that one yet, but you did the live show there. Okay,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
was that your first time at
That
at
was my
that
first
location?
and only time that I've been to the
Okay.
MASH site.
Did you cry? Did you feel like you're going to cry?
I didn't. I didn't because we were part of this celebration and part of this recording, and I was so focused on that aspect
Yeah.
of it
Yeah.
that I really didn't soak it in as much as I thought I would or should have. So
Right.
I do want to go back. I want to go back and I want to do the hike in, not for an appearance, but just to go.
Yeah,
And
it's got to be, you're not concentrating the whole time on being on the moon if you've got to be staring at a panel in front of you in the LEM the whole time. So I think it's that kind of thing. It's like you were working, but
Yeah.
you'd want to just go and kind of soak it in. But
Yeah.
it was
So
very.
We'll all go. We'll all
We
go.
should.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
should.
let's do it.
I want to take a picnic, just like Klinger did. I want to just read about slaking underneath the tree from my poetry books. That's all I want to read about. You and I would just be quoting MASH all day, and Jeff would be like, "What's that from?" Be like, "Jeff, it's from MASH. It's all from MASH."
Jeff, you really should watch the show sometime. It's pretty good.
I've got to. I know I've got to.
You're
Yeah.
so good in
Golly,
it. You're
geez.
so good in it. You really
Ah,
are.
nice.
Isn't
Thank
he?
you very much.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
good the entire
thank you.
time. That was one of the other things that I loved about MASH is the background actors that started as background actors or started with very small parts that were then given more as the show went on, as opposed to, we're going to cast another person in this role. Or we're going to get, it was like, no, we got actors right here. Let's just write
Mhm.
more stuff for the people that are here. That's also very rare and really cool. Yeah. The Nurse Kelly episode, and God rest her. And she had a great interview with you guys, and just watching all that stuff is just seeing, it's like, oh yeah, I wrote an episode for you. That's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
Cost her $50,000 actually to write that.
Worth every penny, because again, she's gone, but not to me. I can turn it on
No,
anytime I
that's
want to,
right.
and she's right in front of
Yes.
me again. So I absolutely love that.
She was a sweetie. I have one question about acting and Alan Alda. You said that he was such an inspiration to you. What about him did that to you? What is it that he did that you went, that works for me. That resonates in my head.
First of all, I don't think I can point to a single moment in 11 seasons that I didn't believe. And again, that's rare, because especially when you're shooting single camera, because something like Boy Meets World, we did it multi-camera. So you rehearse it all week long like a play. You're on a stage, you rehearse. They bring the cameras in, you bring an audience in, you shoot it all one night, and you're done. It's easy to focus for that 4 hours you're shooting the show. You've got the vibe of the audience there. Everybody's involved. You're invested. It's amazing. When you're shooting single camera every day, you're shooting a film every day, every take. It's a tedious process. It's a wonderful process, but it's a long, tedious process. To do that for 11 years, and I've watched the show to the point of stalkerish scrutiny, to do that and to say, I can't think of a moment that reads as false in his entire performance, whether it's the ridiculous wackiness of some of the earlier seasons or some of the real maudlin melancholy stuff from the later seasons. Some would argue too maudlin, too melancholy, too wacky, too crazy. It didn't matter where he was on the spectrum. You believed everything that he did. He committed to every single moment. And that's one thing that's really important for an actor. Is I had one of my friends who was an older acting teacher always said to me, there's times you're going to hit the wall, run into it full speed. That's what you're going to do. He said the worst thing you cannot do, or the worst thing you can do, especially on a show when you've got writers around you, is not commit to a part, not commit to a bit, because then they don't know if it's the writing. If you commit to it and it falls, okay, we saw that it was committed to. We've got to change that. That's on us. If you don't commit to it and it falls, how are the writers going to know whether it's the bit or whether it's you? So you never saw him not commit to whatever he did. It was incredible. And then I would say that. And then the other thing I would say is something you were saying earlier, Ryan. Comedy especially is music. And there's a very specific beat to television. And the greatest actors find a way to play off beat. And Alan Alda always did that. You'd think, just like you were saying with the wonderful compliment about Boy Meets World, you'd think it was going one place and it turned and it went somewhere else. There's actors like that some of the best, where you'd watch their shows and you'd think they were playing the regular standard 4x4 kind of tune, or and then all of a sudden you'd hit some jazz note and it'd be like, where did that come from? And that's what made it special. And it just makes his performance stand out. And that's why the earlier episodes, I really relate to the earlier episodes, because I think they made the more dramatic episodes pop more. When you've got kind of the wackiness of what's going on surrounded by this crazy war, and then you throw in sometimes you hear the bullet. It's the equivalent of being on a set with a producer who yells all the time, where after a while you just don't hear it anymore. And the nice, kind producer who's the nicest person in the world who yells once, then you never forget that yell. So that's kind of what in the beginning Alan Alda was to me, was you'd get those moments where it was all comedy crazy. And as the hijinks, for lack of a better word, of him and Trapper and how they were messing with Frank and all the stuff going on. And then again, you'd get sometimes you hear the bullet, or I'll be seeing you, Henry. And it just kicked you in the gut. And it did, because they played off beat. All of a sudden they took you a different direction. And man, he did that in his performance every time.
Very nicely put. Very nicely put. We will let him know that this podcast is happened, and we will tell him to listen to it.
Are you kidding? Oh my God! Just if he wants me to wash his car or whatever he needs.
I have to back up. We will ask him to listen to it. I rarely have told him anything. It is Alan Alda.
He is. He's one of the best ever. He's got his place in television history, and rightfully so. So
He really does. And the episode, The Hand, is that right, Brian? Is that the one? Or you guys should know the one that he's
with his brother and his father?
Oh no, he's in the little hut with the two Koreans. He has an Jeep accident or something. And
Hawkeye. It's just called Hawkeye.
Hawkeye. That's right.
The one-man show.
Yeah.
The one-man show.
Yeah.
That was the one that really got my attention about Alan Alda. Really got it. I happened to be there and they were shooting, and I watched. I went, wow, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
And
well, the thing that's amazing,
got my attention.
Other than Hawkeye in that episode, you don't see anybody else from the 4077. He says Radar, but you never see Radar. No, you don't see who comes to pick him up. It's him and the Korean family.
Who can't speak English.
Who can't speak English. The only other dialogue is occasionally in Korean. That's it. Yeah. He entertains you for 22 minutes.
Yep.
And it becomes even more absurd when you realize the reason that he's doing it is because if he falls asleep, he could die.
Yeah.
Insane. I mean, absolutely insane. I also just found out that the woman who came back, who played Rosie once or twice, and also was the one who goes after Klinger when that's Mako's wife. I didn't know that.
No, that's not her.
It is.
That's
I'm
Eileen
Googling.
Saki. Eileen Saki is the one who plays the madam, and then.
Oh no, not the madam. No, not the madam. The one for Mad Dogs and Servicemen with the
pitchfork.
Yes, correct.
Yes,
that's who I meant. Yes.
Yep. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Oh
My
God,
apologies.
the whole thing where she plays the madam. Oh, you mean, but you're talking about Binky? Oh, Binky? God. Oh, that whole thing. The Frank thinking. I'm sorry, Jeff. This is just going to be two mash notes going back and forth.
I'm just going to nap for a minute.
That's fine.
Be right back.
This is why you got to go wake up
call here.
You got to start speaking the mash language. When Frank just thinks, when he says it's the oldest profession, he just thinks it's a bakery. A bakery? No, Frank, they're tarts. Tarts? Cherry? Pea? Oh, man. Larry Linville's. I heard a story about Larry Linville, and I don't know if Jeff, if this is true or not. He didn't necessarily want to leave MASH, but after Loretta Swit went to the producers and said, look, Hot Lips needs more. Margaret needs to grow as a character. Larry Linville kind of realized as an actor, that just left the Frank Burns character on an island by himself. Like he's like, what I would have nothing at that point. I have nowhere to go. And that's kind of why he said he wanted to leave. Because I guess he and Loretta Swit were very close. Mm-hmm. And he knew she wanted to grow as a character. And he also knew that was going to leave Frank kind of high and dry. Is that true? Had you heard that as well?
I've heard that as well. Yes. I mean, I wasn't in his head. I don't know what he was thinking. Absolutely. But I mean, that's the obvious issue there, that he really did have no place to go. Yeah. After all the stuff happened. And so he had to move on. That's what happened. And he did it courageously. He probably didn't want to go. Who wants to leave a series that's really successful and everybody's happy and you're making money? But as an actor, he just couldn't take it anymore. So he went away.
Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. It's every single person on the cast was wonderful. Everybody.
They really were. And they were all wonderful people just to be around and have the energy from all those really smart, intelligent, creative, sometimes wacky, sometimes crazy people. But boy, it's like a family. Not everybody gets along every single day all the time. But the family comes together and they're tight. When problems are happening, they get together and solve the problems. So it was an amazing experience. And I'm sure you have close relationships with your cast.
Very.
This cast has close relationships with each other still. So it was an amazing experience with an amazing group of people. You were right to like the show. Both of you guys, you were right. You were correct.
Such a good show. It's such a good show on so many levels. I don't even know. I don't. Well, people always say when they ask that question, who are the 10 people you would invite to, living or dead, that you would invite to dinner? Larry Gelbart's on my list. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's people are like, Abraham Lincoln. Yeah, there'd be some people like that there, but I would want to be seated next to Larry Gelbart and just pick his comedy brain for a while, because there are some people that just speak in comedy. It's just the way their minds work. It's insane. Mm-hmm. And he obviously had that. And I'd give my left arm just to been able to sit down and talk to him once. Would have been absolutely amazing.
Special guy. Really was. Really special guy.
So cool.
So now when we're on your podcast, is there a limo involved? And
we do.
What's the payment like? Do we need to give you our bank routing number? You send it that way?
All you do is
how do you work that?
You stand like at your driveway and we'll be there.
Okay.
It takes a while, but we'll be there. No, it's
if it's an Uber, if you do an Uber, I want the black Uber. The black
Uber black. You got it.
Uber black. They send you
it. I just typed it in. It says it's going to be a 4-hour wait, unfortunately, for an Uber black. It's because my rating is so low.
That's it.
No, this has been incredible. I'm sorry I keep gushing, but I feel like I'm just one of your fans, which I am, and I've listened to all the comments and the people writing in, and I feel like I get to kind of be their voice a little bit, because I am absolutely one of them, and I love the show. I absolutely love hearing the two of you talk about it and the incredible stories that you hear, and it just adds to the richness of this world that I thought I already knew. So from all of the fans of your show out there, thank you so much. This has really been awesome. And I've spoken the entire time. I did not let you guys speak at all. I knew I was going to gush. That's all I wanted to do.
Speaking on behalf of our audience, they want to thank you for that. Thank you. They don't want to hear us either,
and plus that we cut out most of everything you say and just put in our stuff.
Good. I love that.
The whole thing. So
I love that.
Okay.
This is so cool.
And this has been great. This has been so much absolutely fun. Wonderful. Thank you for reaching out
and inviting yourself.
And thank you for introducing me to Boy Meets World, because I'm looking forward to watching more episodes and listening to more episodes of the podcast. And it's just also nice to know that there's somebody out there in the entertainment world who is as big of a MASH nerd as me.
Heck, yes. I will. This is not a euphemism. If you come over, I will show you all my toys.
I've got some up here too. So we'll have to like compare.
Exactly. I'm looking. HQ did a whole train set. I'm still trying to get the whole train set.
I don't have any of the trains.
Me neither. I want to get the whole set intact. We'll talk. We'll talk.
We'll talk. But any parting thoughts? Goodness. Any parting words to the MASH Nation?
It's a wonderful nation to be a part of. It really is. It's incredible television show. There is a reason it has been around for 50 years. There is a reason it is finding new fans every day. That is by the strength of the writing, the strength of the cast. Jeff, you as well. It resonates still, and that's because when something's beautiful, it's always beautiful. That's the joy of MASH. And I just love that I get to turn it on and watch it whenever I want to. It's very relaxing for me. So big fan.
That's wonderful. And, please give my best to your brothers again. Say hello to them. And from me, from my heart, I thought they were going to be freshmen here.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, that was.
I love that so much. And I'd also like to pitch the idea that, Jeff, you're going to need to just pick 1 or 2 episodes, and you guys need to do a rewatch podcast of just a couple of the episodes.
Episodes of what?
Of MASH.
MASH. Okay.
Boy Meets World. Yes,
let's do that.
I'm not going to subject Jeff to Boy Meets World. No,
No. I've seen a little bit. Look, you were terrific. The show was terrific. It was, admittedly, I haven't watched a lot of episodes, but I get it.
You're not in our demo, Jeff. I get that too.
Okay, thank you.
But I would certainly say you should pick a couple of your episodes, and you really should do a rewatch, because I think you're going to be very happy watching MASH again. I really do.
I'm in. Absolutely. All right. I'm committed.
Good.
I'm committed. Just like Alan Alda.
Can we please find out about Mildred? I want to know whose name was Mildred. Ryan, you got to get on that.
I'll get on it.
Hey, well, thank you.
Thank you both so much for taking the time. This has been really great. No joke, you make my walks super enjoyable. I really appreciate it. I really do. And there's a lot of people out there that are loving the show. So thank you both so much.
Thank you to our friend Will Friedle for spending time with us. I don't think we really had to twist his arm that hard to get him to talk about MASH. He was so eager to talk about MASH. It was, And I'm sorry, Jeff. I know he and I got a little too nerdy at times during our conversation, and I'm very sorry that you had to sit there and endure that.
I have nerd stuff all over me. I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to get it off. I don't know. Do you wipe it off, or how do you?
I'm not going to go there. Okay. No, it was great talking to Will. Thank you so much for reaching out to us. And if you are listening and you were a star in a beloved hit television series and you love MASH, feel free to reach out to us. We'll talk to you as well.
And as Will did, it's only a $5,000 upfront fee to get on the show. So thank you, Will. And we always appreciate your business.
That reminds me, I need to send that invoice to Will.
Yeah, I got to send it to Will right away. Yeah. I really enjoyed that. What a nice guy. Really, he's really a terrific guy. He's a smart guy. He's a talented man. And we look forward to seeing a lot of good stuff come out of Will Friedle. Well, I mean, come out of Will Friedle. I mean, we're looking forward to seeing what he does with stuff.
He is so crazy talented.
Yeah, he is.
His voice work is absolutely amazing. Check out his podcast, Pod Meets World, which is about Boy Meets World, and also the podcast I Hear Voices, which is about the voiceover industry. I've been listening to that as well, and it is fun. It's fascinating, and he's just has such a great energy and is a super nice guy. So thanks, Will. It was an honor to talk to you.
And certainly we'll keep watching MASH because I like the residuals.
There you go. Hey, we want to give a quick shout out to some of our VIPs on Patreon.
All right. We're going to start with Private Matthew Holden Taylor.
Corporal Eric Litchert.
Corporal Thomas Carroll.
Captain Nick Lamb.
Captain G.W. Hall.
Captain Maria Higson.
And Captain Eric White, who recently was promoted from corporal. Thank you, Captain.
Yes, thank you, Captain Eric White. And by the way, Eric White, the brains behind the MASH Historian. We'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Go check out the MASH Historian. Up next, Jeff.
Yes.
Episode 100.
Holy moly, Ryan Patrick. Mm-hmm. Episode 100. That's more than 58. That's a lot.
And it's approximately 97 more than I thought we would do. So, hey, people have been asking. We've had people tweeting us and sending us emails saying, hey, you guys got anything special planned for episode 100? And yes, we do. But it may not be what you expect.
I don't think it's what they expect, but boy, it's going to be very revelatory and very interesting. You're going to hear things that you would never think you were going to hear and learn things that you never thought you would learn on this particular podcast. And
it's the first time you will ever hear it. nobody has heard what we're going to give to you in episode 100.
That's right. This is an exclusive, a big exclusive.
Thank you to all of our VIPs. Thank you for listening. And until next time, here's looking up your old address.